Welcome to the Ranieri Agency podcast number 2. We've decided to give it another go. The insights we gave about Amazon in the first podcast seemed to go down quite well on LinkedIn. So this time we're going to try and get an insight into the consumer electronics market in the US. So I hope everyone is doing good. Obviously, we're all in lockdown and adapting to our new way of working at the moment. Hopefully it's not for too long. There's definitely some stressful moments, especially if you've got kids and you're trying to homeschool them. I think everyone understands what I'm talking about. So I'd like to welcome to this podcast my brother from another country. I can't say mother as that's his line. Mr. Max Borges, CEO and founder of the Max Borges Agency, one of the US's premier Miami-based consumer electronics communications agency. I hope I said that. I hope that I explained that correctly, Max, and it gave
That was excellent. Thank you, Pietro. and thanks for having me on. This is great to be here, and always great to see you, buddy. My brother from another mother.
So, Max, a number of years ago, you kindly invited me on your podcast, Unconventional Genius, where you interview a bunch of CEOs, founders, just trying to find out what kind of makes them tick. And I kind of wanted to return the favor, and I'm absolutely, amazed that you can join us today on this podcast. It's interesting that just shows the power of content online these days. But whenever anyone comes in for an interview at Ranieri, they always bring up this podcast, even though we recorded it 10 years ago, I think it was now. So whatever we did back then seemed to go down quite well.
Yeah, well, it's still getting listens. I look at the data; it's still getting listens. People love listening to that podcast. They love listening to what you had to say. So
yeah, it definitely does. I mean, honestly, I think it came up again about a month ago, where I don't think they even look at the date. It's like we did it yesterday. It's great.
Right.
So anyway, I was a lot younger back then. I think I did a marathon back then. That's how long ago it was. I mean, that was.
Yeah, you were super fit though you're super fit now that you're a boxer,
Well, I'm 1-0.
Yeah, exactly. You got a perfect record.
Yeah.
Are you going to do another match?
Well, it was on the plans, yeah, but at the moment the gym's shut, so I'm just trying to do I've got a bag here in the garage. I'm trying to do some work in the garage, but it's not the same without being in the gym. I mean, we were talking about not working in the office, and like the same energy isn't there at home as you would have in the office. And it's just like being in the gym, especially in a boxing gym, because you kind of get pushed along by, your coaches and all the other guys in the gym. So, yeah, hopefully soon we can get back.
Yeah.
So, so thanks for coming on the podcast. I mean, I wanted to really sort of invite you in today, just because on this podcast, we're kind of keen to dig into what's really going on in the kind of CE industry at the moment, what the impact of COVID-19 is having on us. I mean, one of the reasons why I wanted you here is kind of obviously whatever happens in the US generally has a knock on into Europe. And I just thought it would be really insightful for you to answer a few questions just about kind of what's going on from your side, really.
Sure.
Just because I imagine, moving forward, we're definitely going to feel some of the effects of that. So, Max, how are you finding business at the moment? And are you guys in lockdown like we are here? I mean, is the state of play similar?
So, we're all in lockdown. Everybody's working from home. We're in, I guess the fortunate position is, being in Miami, we've had to be ready for hurricanes. And so my IT team has done a spectacular job over the past few years, putting a plan in place to prepare us to be 100% mobile, so that if there was a hurricane, we could all work from home. And that plan was completed a few months ago. So, when this came up, it really was from a technological standpoint not hard at all for people to just grab their laptops and work from home. People have extra monitors. We've got a good program for how to use Zoom and share the various different accounts that we have. And we've got a good the management has just done a spectacular job of putting certain cadence and rhythm of meetings in place to keep everybody engaged and going and feeling like they're connected, which is always hard to do. So right now, yeah, we're definitely in lockdown, but we're not letting it affect our business.
Yeah. So I guess in the US, is there quite a lot of areas where you're saying about being prepared for hurricanes, but I guess is this kind of almost like a normal thing, being prepared for this kind of lockdown across quite a few states?
Well, in Miami it is, and in Florida it is. I don't know that that's the case in many other places, though. I've heard from others that they're people work from home a lot now, and so a lot of times people are ready for that. But then again, I've also heard challenges. One of my team was on a small business administration conference call yesterday, and apparently it was a complete disaster because people couldn't hear each other, and the voice wasn't coming through, or the video wasn't working, or whatever it was. So even sometimes big agencies are having government agencies are having issues with tech because they've never used it at the level that they've used it. So when I heard that, I was just all the more proud of my team. But I think it just varies on how people run their business and at what point they are in their business, and if they've had the time to get around to putting together a disaster plan. So
Yeah. I guess one of the limiting factors is probably internet, because again, I mean, we've never been, like, for example, my own family here. There's myself. I mean, Lisa, who you know, is working. We've got the two kids just kind of having virtual learning, so everyone's kind of hammering the internet, and I guess that's going on for every single house, in the village at the moment. And I just don't think the internet's ever been put through its paces like this before. So yeah, that's cool. So in the UK at the moment, we've obviously got our Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who, by the way, has just been tested positive for COVID-19 today.
I heard about that.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Is that something that's shocking people? Are people worried about that?
I mean, the way it's been explained to us is, obviously COVID-19. I think the people that it's really affecting are the vulnerable. So like the older, the sort of plus 70, 80-year-olds, people with underlying conditions. And I guess, hopefully the Prime Minister is, he's not in one of those categories. And I guess he's going to get pretty good medical care. But apparently they're saying he's just got very mild symptoms. So, which apparently quite a large percentage of people that do get the virus, they don't even, some don't even notice the symptoms, and some it's just very mild, and he just seems to be fitting into the very mild category at the moment. So fingers crossed. But the reason why I brought him up is in the UK, I mean, he's doing, from a PR point of view, he's doing a great job in kind of, explaining what's going on. They've kind of staggered the lockdown process. So I think what reading between the lines, being a PR person myself, I think they've gradually built up the kind of seriousness of this, through a lot of different stages. So the people themselves are actually starting to understand the gravity of not going out, not kind of, doing certain things. And they're kind of almost like starting to self-police each other. And I think it's been handled really well. I mean, the way they've been updating the UK public every day at 5 o'clock. So there's another one coming up in an hour and a half here. And they've kind of pretty much, taken all the questions from the press, explained everything that's going on, why they're doing it, reiterating it's all about the NHS and managing the flow of patients in. So certainly from the UK side, I mean, even kind of all the opposition in Parliament haven't really had much to say either, just because it's been kind of handled really well. And I just wondered whether you guys are getting the same over in the US. I mean, I know we've been hearing all sorts of things about Trump sort of seems to almost be in denial about what's going on. Apparently it's all going to be over with by Easter Sunday, which is April the 12th. And I just wanted to get your sort of feedback, really, what you've been sort of hearing. It's almost like a soap opera over here when you kind of hear what he's been saying.
Yeah, well, there's been a lot of communication. So Trump and Vice President Pence and the rest of the team are on TV every day, sometimes twice a day, if not more. So there's just tons of communication about what's going on. And you know, our news media over here, when it comes to you know, this kind of thing, is just insane. It's either hard right or hard left, and so, you know, you either have the group that absolutely hate Trump, or the group that think Trump is, you know, the best president we've ever had. And there seems to be no middle ground whatsoever. So it's always kind of a soap opera when it comes to politics here. You know, it just, I guess it depends, you know, who you ask, but they're just getting ready now to approve a pretty major financial package. I think it might have been approved yet, but there's still detail to be reported. It's, I don't know, $2 trillion, $3 trillion. It's fairly enormous, and you know, I'm confident that that's going to have a big impact, you know, on the economy. You know, over the past few days, the economy had been ticking back up again. Today it's down a little bit, but over the past 3 days it had been going up quite a bit. So I think that people are it's probably starting to level off as far as the economy is concerned. And as far as, you know, how people are behaving out there based on what they're hearing on the news, I think, you know, most people are hunkered down. You know, they're staying inside. You know, people are keeping their distance from each other. They're not getting together. You're not seeing issues with, you know, I mean, businesses that are non-essential are closed down in most cities, and so I think people understand what they need to do to get through this.
And is the lockdown, I mean, I guess it's an enforced lockdown. It's, you know, shops are shut apart from, I guess, supermarkets and essentials.
Yeah, there's still quite a few things you can do. You can go to the supermarket, you can go to the drugstore, you can, you know, go get gas for your car, you can go to the auto repair store, you can, you know, there's various different things. You can pick up food at different restaurants to go, have food delivered, things like that. I went by my office yesterday just to get out of the house for a little while. There were 2 other employees in the office. There's usually 40 in there. And there were 3 of us. So obviously, you know, we're very distanced in the in the office, and nobody was getting anywhere close to each other. So yeah, I mean, it's not like the military is out, you know, stopping you if they see you out on the streets, but I think people are doing a really good job of just staying inside. I mean, the streets are I think the only cars on the road are people going to the supermarket, or, you know, delivery drivers.
Yeah, that does sound very similar to here, actually. I mean, the one weird experience I had last night was I finally ventured out after a few days and went to the supermarket. And I just went to Tesco's, which is like a local supermarket here in the UK.
Right.
And I got there, and we all got ushered in one way, and they were exiting people out another way. But on the way in, they had, you know, like hand sanitizer and things. People had to kind of like do their hands before they went in. Everything was limited, because I don't know, here they've been kind of bulk buying. So straight away, people were buying toilet paper, pasta. I mean, I haven't seen toilet paper in the shops for about 2 weeks.
Yeah, neither have we, which is insane. Now, it's interesting you said that, because they're not doing that here at the supermarket. They're at the grocery store. They're just doing things the way they've always done it. You just walk in the grocery store, you go anywhere you want, you do anything you want. It's really not a safe place to go, in my opinion. And the supermarkets are just full of people at all times. I think because now people they want to get out of the house, and so maybe they're probably going to the grocery store more often, just as a little getaway. And there's just tons of people, you know, in there. Half of them, maybe a third of them, are wearing masks and gloves, and the rest of the people are not wearing anything. And you know, it's probably the number one place right now where you can get coronavirus.
It is. I mean, in the UK, I mean, I can only speak for my own sort of local supermarket, which isn't in a city or anything, but it's just very strange going in, and you can sort of physically see people backing away from you. And it's like, it just feel, I'm a social person. And I find it very off-putting to kind of be in that situation. So,
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I'm a hugger, so
yeah,
if I can't give you a big hug, then that's uncomfortable.
they're like this. Come on, what's wrong? So with the business support, then, I mean, will any of that be able to help you guys out? I mean, in the UK, we've got things like there's no VAT being paid, which is like the 20% tax. I think you don't have to, it won't be taken from our accounts now for about 6 months. There's business rates on certain employees. They're, rather than making people redundant if you can't pay them for any reason, they've got this thing called a furlong. So the government will pay up to £2,500 a month of their salary. It's all really good stuff. They put
Yeah.
a mortgage holiday in, so your mortgages you won't have to pay for 3 months. You can just request it from the bank if you've been affected. The only criticism is that a lot of this is all these things are in place, but it's still not available yet. So it's all been announced, but
Yeah.
businesses like I mean, it's okay for we're on retained work and stuff like that, and 1 month isn't going to kill us. But if you're like a coffee shop or a sort of small business, and you just suddenly like that's it, your revenue just stops dead.
Right.
You might not be able to pay your employees like straight away. Like you won't have the money until this thing kicks in. So there's definitely going to be lots of holes in people's income. Because at the moment, like with mortgage windows, I mean, I called up for my own house and it's just not available. A, you can't get through to the bank because they're so inundated with calls.
Right.
B, it's not set up yet. They're trying to figure it out as well.
Yeah, we're in exactly the same boat. Tons of different programs that they're talking about and that they're announcing that sound like they're going to be fantastic. But for me as a business owner, it's tough to consider, making decisions based on a program that I'm not even 100% sure I'm going to qualify for.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's some programs where they say they might, help you pay employees if you don't fire them. Well, okay, but there's not enough detail yet to know. And my accounting firm is looking into it, and they've been sending us twice daily emails with updates, but they're still not 100% sure. Probably not going to know till next Tuesday, maybe later, and then who knows how long it's going to be for them to get checks out. But it's a big undertaking, to distribute $2 trillion effectively, is not easy to do. I remember losing my luggage once on the way to Rome with my wife, and we each got $500 from American Express that we had to spend before we found our luggage, if we found our luggage. And I remember how hard it was to spend the $500 just, buying things, everyday things that you needed to replace in the bag. So I can't imagine what it's like to distribute, $2 trillion to businesses and to people effectively, across the country.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess the big hurdle really is just to make sure that people they're not, they're being fraudulent. People trying to take advantage of all these grants, and there's, I mean, it's that I'm sure it's going to happen. So
Of course, and that's the big problem, right? Is you want to get the money out there quickly, but to do it in a way where people are not going to be fraudulent, you've got to have systems and processes in place. Well, you don't have time for these things. You basically have to hand, the money out and then hope that people are going to be honest, knowing that they can be audited retroactively and get in a lot of trouble if they, take money that they shouldn't have taken.
Yeah. So coming back to the CE industry then. So at the moment, we found that obviously we've been affected in the short term with things like Mobile World Congress being, iced, and some of the other shows, and just sort of short-term projects that we would have otherwise completed. Have you seen any kind of change in your clients' behavior in terms of spending at the moment? Are they being more conservative? Are things not being signed off? Have you sort of noticed anything?
A little bit. There's some new prospects that have delayed making a decision to move forward. But I think we've got a lot of really great clients and a lot of really smart companies, and they know, when, as they say, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. And a time like this is actually a phenomenal opportunity to gain market share amongst your competitors, because a lot of companies, are nervous, and so they're not making aggressive moves forward, and they're taking their foot off the gas a little bit. And that's an opportunity for you to go in there and get aggressive in your marketing and how you're pushing your company forward and gain market share. And even though your sales may be flat or your sales may be down, your competitor is going to be down even more. And so when you come back, you're just going to be in a much better position against your competitor to make a much better comeback than anybody else. And I think a lot of our clients understand that. I mean, I understand that as a business, because I went through this in 2008, 2009, where we really put the pedal to the metal and grew a little bit, not a lot, but we grew a little bit, and that really made a really big difference in our overall growth trajectory over the years. And so I look at this time right now as an opportunity, because anytime there's change, anytime there's an opportunity to kind of look at it and go, what can we do different? What can we do better than anybody else? How can we use this to our advantage? And that's the way that I think you have to look at it, with that kind of optimism.
And I suppose the other side of the scales there is, in consumer electronics. I mean, I remember from the last recession, 2007, 2008, actually, we did quite, the brands that we were working for still did quite well. Because in a recession, people stop buying the big stuff like cars and houses and all that kind of stuff. And then they still spend money, but they spend maybe on smaller items like consumer electronics. But in this situation, I think the brands are struggling for slightly different reasons. So, I mean, in the UK, there was a whole kind of discussion around what was going on with online platforms like Amazon, because Amazon themselves were reallocating shelf space to COVID-19 priority items like hand sanitizer, toilet roll, things that were kind of needed, or that were selling out because of it. And especially now that all the kind of bricks and mortar shops are shut as well, so all the consumer electronics stores are shut, so the only place you can buy is online. I mean, are kind of your brands feeling the same sort of pinch? Are the other sales channels being restricted, or is it just kind of now doubling through online? I mean, what's going on there?
Yeah, again, I think it's about looking at looking at the challenge and going, how are we going to make the best of it? So, you've got to double down in those areas that maybe you weren't paying attention to before, and see what opportunities you have to build the business. And different businesses obviously are going to be impacted in different ways depending on how valuable their product is under the current situation, right? So, for example, we have a client called Phone Soap who makes a small box that you put your phone in, and then when you close the box, it uses ultraviolet light to disinfect and kill all the germs on the phone. Well, they have blown up. They've sold more they're completely sold out of product. I think they sold more product in the last few weeks as they did in the previous year, and are completely on back order, and are getting tons of press and are doing fantastically well. And I'm sure there's other companies that are absolutely taking a hit. So it's going to vary from one company to another, but you've got to be creative, and you've got to sit back and ask yourself, what can we do to be excellent under the circumstance, as opposed to what can we do to not go out of business? Okay, that's the defensive way to look at it, and certainly you have to look at it that way, but at the same time you have to look at it and go, how can we make this into a great opportunity for ourselves? Where is the silver lining here, and how can we come out of this with a great story about how we turned a negative into a big positive?
Yeah,
but that's just
initially a lot of the brands here what they were worried about is that I think something, I can't remember what the stats are, but it's like 60% of all consumer electronics products in the UK are sold via Amazon. And suddenly Amazon were restricting their shelf space. So once the kind of product ran out that was already stocked, that was it. They weren't taking any more. I think the reality is there are different ways to sell through Amazon, which brands can take advantage of. But again, some of the brands, they weren't set up to use these different ways. They didn't, they weren't aware of what was going on. And I think, it's been a real wake up call, I think, to brands just in terms of like their sales strategies and kind of to have contingencies. I think if, because I mean, you as an agency, we would never, rely on one client as like with 60% of our revenue, because we knew that would just be an untenable, dangerous position to be in case you lost a client for whatever reason. But I think there's a lot of consumer electronics brands, certainly up until this point, may have been in that situation with one sales channel, sort of relying on Amazon. I mean, it's great while it works, but in a situation like this, suddenly you're really exposed.
Yeah. Well, and that's a choice that we make as business owners, right? If you've got 60% of your business under one client or 60% of your business under one distributor, retailer, sales channel, whatever it is, that's a business choice that you're making, and you accept the risk with it. And if that's not working out for you right now, then obviously you're going to be better prepared the next time around.
Yeah.
So hopefully it's something that companies will be able to survive, because next time around, they're going to understand that, when you do something like that, you take a risk. I mean, I remember, when I first started my agency and I had, one client, I was terrified because I only had one client. I was just starting. And when I had 2, 3, 4, 5 clients, I was still terrified because with 5 clients, you lose one of them and you might lose 20%, 30%, 40% of your business overnight. So my motivation was always not to grow the individual clients, but to get more clients so that no one client was too much of my business. And so, I was always just terrified of that. Yeah. And today don't have any clients that are more than 5 or 6% of our business. And so, these are all decisions that we make as business people, and sometimes you have to take that risk and put all your chips on one number. But I think again, this is what running business is all about, right? It's about choosing your risks and making the decisions that are going to be best for you. And sometimes they're right and sometimes they're wrong. And hopefully they're not so wrong that they put you out of business.
I'm pretty sure we talked about this in our original podcast 10 years ago, but it's calculated risk. It's, if you've got an over-reliance on one brand or one customer, you just need to make sure you're using it as a stepping stone to get to where you want to be. You can't rely on that business moving forward. And I think certainly a lot of young consumer electronics brands that may have been caught out in the last month or so, this is a learning curve for them. And if they come out of it the other side, they now know how to reorganize their model moving forward. I mean, Warren pointed out to me in the first podcast about Amazon and companies that were overly reliant on Amazon, not to forget other platforms like eBay. They do exactly the same thing, but a lot of people focus on Amazon because that's where the media hype is. So yeah, cool. My next question really was around a lot of shows. I mean, so far this year, we've had Mobile World Congress, E3, GDC. I'm pretty sure IFA is going to be cancelled as well. Brands typically use those shows as a platform to kind of launch a bunch of products or to do all of their sort of face-to-face meetings. I mean, it's always sort of, it's a well-known fact that, it might be difficult to kind of meet people from brands because everyone's so busy through the year, but at the shows on the other side of the world, they're much more available just because they're there to meet people for 3 or 4 days. Now, throughout the whole of this year, I'm not really sure of any sort of major show that's probably going to really go ahead. May even go into CES next year. You never know. Hopefully by then it should be okay. But I kind of feel that brands have had an opportunity to rethink how they spend their marketing budget because, what we found certainly at Ranieri is brands that would typically have spent quite a lot of money at expos around their stands, getting people there, kind of all the kind of costs that get associated with it, have suddenly got budget available. They've still got their product launches through the year, but they're having to sort of rethink what they do. And I actually think when we come out of the other side of this, I do worry for exhibition providers, because I wonder if once people have kind of realised that they don't have to spend $500,000 on an exhibition stand and can still launch their products in the same way to press, will they continue to kind of spend money in this way, or will they actually be a lot more focused on doing like Apple and some of the bigger brands for years? They've done their own developer conferences, their own announcements. They completely bypass exhibitions and have done for a long time. Is that the way forward for brands these days, or do you think the exhibition model will just pop up just like it always has?
That's a great question, and it's something that I had thought about years ago when video conferencing started to come out, and I just thought, wow, with video conferencing and the internet, why do you even need a trade show? I mean, you can see everything, you can communicate, effectively, just like you and I are communicating right now. This is almost as good as talking face to face, and I was shocked to see shows like CES continue to grow and grow and grow. I think something like this happening, and we'll see if this impacts CES. I doubt it's going to still be an issue by the time CES comes around in January. But I think it's forcing people to use video conferencing more effectively. I think people don't use video conferencing enough now. A lot of times people still email each other, or maybe they'll call each other, but they're not video calling each other enough and making that contact, which is one of the real values, I think, in the trade shows, is having the face-to-face contact. But you can get that through video conferencing. It's just that people don't use it for whatever reason. I don't know if they're afraid they're going to buy. It's just kind of this wall that exists where you don't know if the person is busy. You don't know if that person wants to talk to you, where if you're at a trade show and you see somebody standing there, it's a lot easier to walk up to them, especially if you know them, and to say hi to them, or to set a meeting to talk to them. But I think that this is probably going to just move that forward more quickly, just this idea of people using video conference to communicate more often and more effectively. Will it replace the trade show? I don't know. I mean, people still like meeting people in person and touching and feeling products and having that kind of experience. But so if I had to guess, I would say that it's probably not going to have a huge long-term impact on trade shows, but it probably will have a positive impact on how well and how effectively people are using video conferencing to communicate.
I mean, one thing over the past maybe 5 years now, I mean, I think trade shows they're always a great kind of epicenter for people to kind of meet, all across the world, and everyone to kind of be focused on a particular event. But already I've seen, I spend probably you're the same, but, meetings at places like CES tend to be more in hotel suites than they do at the conference themselves. And I just wonder if maybe that will kind of, increase more, where people won't get this enormous stand anymore. They'll kind of the suites will become a bit more lavish. And, I mean, I'm going to put my stake in the stand here and say, look, I think that shows, will have a knock-on effect from this, because I think people will sort of wake up to the fact that maybe they can actually be more productive with their budget with hitting their customers than spending, $500,000 on a stand, where they'll probably, I mean, when you have that stand for the whole week, you probably get 2 or 3 really good meetings, which end up in proper customers with proper POs. I mean, would you have been able to find those brands otherwise? Probably. But
yeah. Could you have spent that $500,000 hiring 3 or 4 or 5 really good business development people? Yeah. And would they have accomplished more in a year than you did at that trade show? Yeah. And you're only looking at the costs of being at the trade show, but what about all of the attention that gets put on that trade show and that gets taken away from other activities. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think that trade shows have a lot of costs and a lot of hidden costs that if they were redirected toward other activities, might, in some cases, get you a better outcome. I'm sure it varies. And look, there's some things that you can't replace, you know, that serendipitous opportunity to meet people when you're walking around, when you're, you know, at a party, when you're at an event, when you're standing next to, if I'm standing next to you and you introduce me to somebody who you know that I don't know, you know, those kinds of things don't happen when you're doing a video conference. But they could happen if you're proactive enough about, you know, asking for those introductions and following through with them. People are just not that aggressive and that comfortable with that, so they don't do it as much. But I do think that there's some irreplaceable value that comes from being at trade shows, but you know, what dollar value you can put on that is, you know, it's a big question mark.
Yeah, 100%. So I've noticed that a lot of things have gone online already. I mean, a lot of brands are kind of taking advantage of things like streaming and webcasting and stuff. Have you, I mean, there was one in particular I watched last week, I think, which, you know, I think for our industry, there's definitely a massive opportunity to kind of, you know, be creative and get these things more interesting, because, you know, I don't want to see, you know, a man stand on a stage in front of a green screen for 45 minutes, which is kind of, you know, reenacting a live event. I mean, actually, you know, I was saying, why not get, you know, if you're launching like a music product, you know, get a hologram of Jim Dawes to do the, you know, to do the presentation. Jim Morrison, but from the Doors, not Jim Dawes. You know, get him to do the presentation on the stage, or just do it in a kind of, you know, fun, you know, cool way. You know, when it's virtual, you can do all sorts of stuff. You know, you can have the guy presenting on top of a mountain, you know, rather than just that kind of backdrop. I mean, have you seen anyone sort of taking advantage of any of this technology yet? Or...
You know, I haven't been on social media much this past week or so. So I haven't seen a whole lot. I've seen some artists do some, you know, free virtual concerts. The guy from Coldplay did like a virtual concert from his home, took requests and everything. That was kind of cool, but I haven't seen a lot. But I think there's a huge opportunity, you know, for that kind of content to be developed, and that kind of, you know, real time live type of content to be put out there.
Yeah, definitely. So, how are your? I mean, one of the concerns I've got here in the UK, and we touched on this before the call, is just kind of employees and working at home and their general kind of mental state. I mean, I know when I kind of first set up Ranieri, I mean, one of the reasons why Ranieri even exists is because I went freelance very early on, and I just couldn't work at home on my own. I just absolutely detested it, and to the point where I felt I was becoming unhealthy. And I eventually just got myself a little office so I could get up in the morning, get dressed, you know, go to an office, go to a place of work, and have, you know, some separation between work and home. Because I think once you work at home for a while, it's very easy just to kind of sit in front of your laptop. You know, eventually you start to forget time. You start to, you know, meals start to, you know, become, you know, all times of the day. You get out of your sort of normal exercise routine, and it's really unhealthy. And I think, you know, mentally it's not a great sort of situation to be in. And I just wondered if, you know, are you going to be trying to do anything with your employees to keep them healthy, or have you had any concerns that you're worried about?
Yeah, I have a lot of concerns because, you know, though for some employees, I mean, look, if you're a single person living at home, that's tough because then you're alone all the time, and that can really wear on you. If you're a married person and you have children, that's a huge challenge because now your kids are not at school and you have to take care of your kids while you work, and that's not easy to do. So people who don't have help, and who both the husband and wife, or, you know, both partners work, it's very, very difficult. Now, if one of the partners has lost their job, then that's stressful too. So there's stress coming from so many different angles. I think there's probably very few situations where working from home is working perfectly. I think that just the fact that we have a few people coming into the office just to kind of get out of the house shows that people do like to get away. Not everybody's home is set up optimally, where they have room for a home office, or they have some separation, or they have a quiet place, or things like that. So it's a lot of stress. I mean, I know with some of my employees where the husband and wife are both working and they have kids, they're taking turns taking care of their kids and kind of, working for a few hours and then taking care of the kids, and then working for a few hours and taking care of the kids. But what that means is that their workday is being stretched into like a 16-hour workday to get 8 hours of work in, because half of the time they're taking care of the kids and half of the time they're working, and the other partner's doing the same thing. And so now, they're working a couple hours in the morning, a couple hours in the afternoon, a couple hours in the evening, and a couple hours late at night. It's like the day never ends, and there's never any time where they're both free to just chill out and watch some Netflix together. So it's really, really, really tough, and I'm really proud of under those circumstances. My folks are doing an amazing job. I got to say, I was nervous when we were first talking about letting everybody work from home and how that was going to work. But even with all that stress and all those challenges, everybody on the team is doing a spectacular job. They understand how important it is for us to, keep pushing forward as hard as we can. As I like to say, the only thing worse than getting the coronavirus is getting the coronavirus and then losing clients and then having to lay some people off. So, we don't want that to happen. We've got to keep pushing through these tough times so that they don't hit us harder than we want them to.
Yeah, I mean, I think as employers, I definitely feel a sense of responsibility, and that it's I've just thought of a few ideas that I might. Because I think one thing I've noticed, like for example, with IT in the office, I'm always staggered sometimes where someone might have a laptop that isn't working properly and their mic's not been working, and they don't actually say anything because they're too worried about seeming to be being a difficult person or something. And I just want to make sure that I speak to all employees, maybe even call them individually and just say, look, have you got everything you need at home? Is there anything we can do to make anything better? Because I mean, you guys are probably way ahead of us because you're prepared for the hurricane season. You've kind of put stuff in place. Whereas for us, this is a completely, no one in the UK is prepared for this because this has never happened before. People are used to working at home, but working at home from our point of view means just taking your laptop home and working from home for the day. All our stuff is in the cloud, but when you're working for weeks on end in an environment where, you haven't got a big screen, like a keyboard and a mouse and all that kind of stuff, it becomes difficult. So it's funny when you said about the kids and family and stuff. Again, I'm lucky here where I've got, my wife and my two kids here, and I'm actually just trying to stay positive and just, I'm sort of seeing it as a look, when in the next 20 years am I going to get to spend 2 months with my kids?
Right.
Normally I'm not here, and I see them in the morning and I see them at night. Both times they're grumpy because once they've got up early they don't want to get up, and the other end of the day they don't want to go to bed. So, and that's when I see them.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
In between, they're quite good fun to be around. So but I was thinking about people that, some of the guys that work for us, they live in London and they're in like a small flat somewhere. I mean, it's a lifestyle choice. It's amazing when you're young and you're in the center of London, but being locked down like this, it's like being in a prison cell. When they're in a sort of tower block and they can't get out and they can't go out to bars and stuff and they can't get to their family. They're the guys that I just feel like, man, I don't know, maybe we should just take extra care of and just make sure they've got everything they need. But
yeah, I totally agree. I just, at this point, and we do that, of course. I reach out to employees to see, how they're doing and if they need anything. I think from an IT perspective, like they know that the expectation is that their IT always be 100% on point. And so we expect them to always expect that. And so, everybody's got a headset like this, and everybody's got a good webcam, and everybody's got an extra monitor at home. We supplied everybody in the company with an extra monitor at home. And so everybody's got the equipment that they need. And then, our IT team is, reaching out to people on a regular basis and making sure that they have everything they need as well, checking on everything. And so I think that all that's working out. I think some of the challenges, I don't know what the solution is, because if someone's locked in and they, want to get out, there's not a whole lot we can do. Now we are having a company meeting today, and we turned it into a happy hour meeting. So we're going to be doing a Zoom meeting. There'll probably be more than 40 people on it. And everybody's going to have a alcoholic beverage to drink during the meeting. So that'll be late in the day today, but that'll hopefully be something that'll be fun for everybody and give everybody a few minutes of relief.
We've got a hard stop at 4:30, which is in 35 minutes. We have exactly the same thing here.
Oh, nice.
The right end of the day. You've still got a few hours to wait.
All right.
So so cool. So when do you think things might get back to normal? I mean, I've been sort of quite well, not excited is the wrong word, but kind of quite happy about the fact China seems to be getting back on the mend now. Apparently, production's up to sort of 70%. A lot of the rules are being relaxed.
Yeah.
And obviously, Italy and Spain here in Europe have had it really bad. But a lot of other countries around the world seem to be controlling it a bit better. And I think the UK is, it's everything that we've been doing is all about protecting the NHS here. And I think I sort of got some glimpses yesterday from the 5 o'clock presentation that apparently they're definitely ahead of the curve in terms of slowing things down, which is good. But yeah, when do you got any feelings for when you think this thing might kind of get back to normal?
It's hard to say, but the one thing I think we have to our advantage in that, we weren't the first country to get hit by this is it seems like there's quite a bit of progress being made as far as treatments and maybe a potential cure for this. And, people are not really so worried about getting coronavirus. They're worried about dying from coronavirus or giving it to somebody who could die from coronavirus. And so if a treatment can come out that can cure people or help people get better from this so that they don't die, well, then that's a game changer, because then people don't have to worry so much about whether or not they get the coronavirus, because it's just going to be, you like getting the flu and you get better and that's the end of it. So, I'm optimistic and hopeful. I'm always an optimistic guy. So I'm hopeful that something like that is going to be, coming out soon. And it sounds like a vaccine is still a long ways off. But, look, there's so many smart people out there working on this right now, thousands and thousands of smart people, and they don't even know what each other is doing. And so what we don't know is if somebody's really close to being onto something that can make a real difference, that's going to come out, any day now or any week now. And I'm hopeful that we're going to have some happy surprises that are going to be very positive and that are going to get us out of this more quickly. Will it happen by Easter, as Trump has predicted? Yeah, I think that's a little bit maybe too optimistic. But I made a prediction yesterday to my team that by the end of the year that the markets would hit record highs again, and I think that it probably won't be too long after Easter, weeks versus months, that things start to level off and get back to normal again. That would be my prediction, but what do I know about these things?
I think as soon as there is a glimmer of us coming out of this, those markets are going to rocket, because people will just start plowing back in, because they know that there all is a huge amount of money to be made at the moment.
Absolutely. And people are just they're looking for the bottom, and I think that maybe some people didn't think that the bottom might have come 3 or 4 days ago. I don't know how your markets have done in the past few days, but ours came up quite a bit this week, and went down a little bit today. I haven't watched it since we started this call, but it was just down a bit. So yeah, I agree 100%. I think as soon as people see the light at the end of the tunnel, that the markets are going to skyrocket. And because it's not a financial issue, it's something that's going to come back much more quickly. I know that, look, there's a lot of negative people out there in the news. The news loves to paint the worst case scenario. What's the worst thing that could happen? Well, everybody could die, I guess, and the markets could go to zero, and the world will end. But that's unlikely. I think that people are very resilient, and they'll figure it out. And things really, as bad as they are, they could be a lot worse. So we have to count our blessings.
And at the end of the day, I mean, business is still happening. It just feels like there's just a massive kind of bit of limbo going on at the moment. Everyone's like dying to get back to work now. It's crazy. So Max, final question, and I know you're a busy guy and got lots to do. So if you're going to give some brands a couple of tips right now, what would they be?
Well, they would be to, one, sit back and take a different view of your business, and instead of just looking at it from a defensive, how are we going to save money, how are we going to cut back? I mean, you got to do those things at a time like this, but where's the opportunity in this challenge for me to improve my business, to gain market share over competitors? And look for those things and try to put those things into action, and just kind of bring your team together in that kind of positive way, because otherwise you're just going to be just like everybody else, and there's always opportunities within every negative situation, and I think most entrepreneurs can understand this kind of thought process, because most entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs because they're optimistic, and this is an optimistic way of looking at things. And you got nothing to lose by taking some time to pull your team together and think about what things that you can do that will allow you to do the best that you can and maybe even thrive in this challenging situation.
I mean, there's definitely a lot of companies out there doing well at the moment as well. Let's not forget that. I mean,
of course,
I think the laptop guys have all sold out. You were telling me about your client earlier with the self-cleaning case, the case that cleans the phone.
Yep. Phone soap. Yep. They're doing fantastic.
There's lots of guys out there. So there's opportunity. It's just kind of, it's just figuring it out. That's the key thing. So yeah. Okay. Well, look, Max, it's been a pleasure. I mean, I know we talk a lot anyway, but just to do it and make our conversations public is amazing.
Absolutely. Pleasure was all mine. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. And look, stay well, and my love to everyone over there. And
you too. My love to you and Lisa and the kids, and hope to see you guys soon, Pietro.
Thanks, man.
And give you a big hug.
Yeah, over here.
All right, buddy.